Good evening. Can you hear me? Good evening.
Good evening.
We want to go ahead and get started because we're so excited that you're here, and we want you to take all this good information home, but we don't want to tire you out either. So open your ears and put on your smiles and sit back for the ride. My name is J.C. Hooker, and I am the League of Women Voters of Calvert County. I want to thank everyone for coming out tonight. You honor our system because as a part of the candidates that are here tonight, you are the other part of the equation because we are the people, for the people, by the people. And I say this to you tonight, your job is still not done. We need you to go to the polls. We need for you to research these candidates. We also need for you to call on your neighbor. We need for you to call on your organizations. I think Calvert County could be one of the first counties that we can say we almost got 95% of our people out to vote. But it's got to happen with all of us here working. So once again, I challenge each one of you tonight, find 10 people that will go to the polls and vote. Our voices will be heard. Democracy does work. But we the people must let our representative know this is what we need. This is what we want. So I beg of you this evening, take all of this, listen to it, but also go home and tell your friends, look at the recording and hear for themselves. One of the things we must all learn is when somebody says, who should I vote for? So you need to go to 411 and look to see what they said, answered the questions to, or go look at the recording. Because what I want, you may not want. And you need to know what that candidate is going to do for you. These people tell us they're going to speak for us, they're going to represent us, and everybody has a right to call them, email them, text them, instead of talking about it. Talking about it to each other never solves the problem. If you go to the polls and vote for them, and I will say this, and in all honesty to all candidates, they are accountable to us. They are responsible to us. So I'm saying to you this evening, your vote does count, but you've got to get in here and work and let them know when they're not listening to what we, the people, need most of all. I'm through. At this particular time, I would like for us to stand and do the pledge of allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated. At this particular time, I'm going to let my moderators, Lynn and Dixie, introduce themselves, and they will take over the program. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Leonard Zouza.
And my name is Dixie Miller.
We want to thank the staff of the Harriet Brown Community Center for making this space available to us this evening. We also want to thank Calvert Media for live streaming this event and for making a recording available to the public on YouTube. So if at any point you feel you didn't understand something, you can go back to the video and clarify points that the candidates make.
We're also grateful for all the candidates that are willing to come here tonight and their willingness to participate, and the members of the audience who all of you took your time out of your busy days to be here this evening. And we're sure that you could have found something else to do, but you care enough to come out and hear what the candidates have to say. We'd also like to express our special thank you to our outreach partners as well. We have worked with these organizations for many years and look forward to their continued partnership.
And actually would like to start off by acknowledging the presence of Nikki Tyree, who's sitting in the far end of the room. She's the executive director of the State League of Women Voters. She's here in Calvert County to see how things should be done as far as running a campaign. And the organizations to whom we extend a particular thank you are the Concerned Black Women of Calvert County, the NAACP of Calvert County, the Omega Pi Omega chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority, Sigma Alpha Lambda chapter of Alpha Pi Alpha Fraternity, Southern Maryland Chain chapter of the Lynx, Sustainable Calvert Network, and the Tri-County Alumni chapter of the Delta Sigma Theta Sorority. Thank you very much. Let's extend a thank you to these organizations.
And so we've got a few rules, ground rules here for this evening's forum. And so I'll go over those. I'd like for everyone to turn off their cellular devices, cell phones, anything that's electronic that makes noise. If you could silence that or just turn it off. Displays of any campaign paraphernalia, buttons, t-shirts, signs, or anything that supports a particular candidate is not permitted in this room this evening. No photographs or recordings may be taken during the forum by anyone except the Calvert County government public broadcast representatives. The video of the forum will be available on YouTube, and all you have to do is search Calvert County government shortly after the forum. Your participation constitutes agreement to appear in any recording. Your participation in this forum constitutes acknowledgement you cannot use, rebroadcast, or print forum content without permission of the League of Women Voters of Calvert County.
Now for the audience and what we expect of you all. Please refrain from applauding or in other ways demonstrating support or non-support for a candidate. Questions for the candidates from the audience are written on League-supplied 3x5 cards and handed to a question screening team. You can receive cards from and pass your questions to our volunteers. And if you need a card, please raise your hand so that a volunteer can give one to you. Although we want you to submit questions that you would like the candidates to answer, please understand that because of the large number of questions that we receive and a limited time we have, we may not be able to ask every question that we receive, but please submit them anyway.
And for the candidates,
Us?
that
Thanks,
means
Dixie.
you, Todd,
Thank you.
and Bill.
Thank you.
A candidate may not participate in the forum unless at least one primary or general election opponent also participates. This is a forum, not a debate. Candidates will remain behind the table. A candidate may stand or remain seated when answering a question or making a statement, but please make sure that you speak into the microphone. No questions will be provided in advance to any candidate. The first responder to each question and the closing statement will rotate based on a predetermined league-generated random speaking sequence. Not every candidate will be asked every question. A candidate must answer each question posed to them, but may also use a portion of their time to respond to any question previously posed. Previously asked questions will not be repeated. Also, you can use the notepads that have been provided to you there, and if you make notes when you leave, when your time is up, you can tear that sheet of paper off but leave the pad for the next group.
Okay. Candidates will be given a notepad, if we've just observed, may take notes, may ask a moderator to repeat a question the first time it is asked, but may not ask the moderator to repeat a previous question. Each candidate will be allowed 1 minute to answer each question, and they will be provided 1 minute for a closing statement. In order to have time for more questions, there will not be opening statements tonight. The timekeeper, who's sitting in front here, will hold up a sign when 30 seconds remain. A bell will ring when your time is up. You may finish the sentence you are in the middle of making and then stop speaking. There will be no time allotted for rebuttals, and candidates will not interrupt one another and will refrain from personal attacks.
The candidates this evening for the office of Maryland District 29 Delegate are Todd Morgan and Bill Bates. With respect to the order in which the questions will be answered by the candidates, an online application called random.org has been used. The candidates' numbers were determined by the order on the ballot. So, for example, 2 candidates are running for this particular office. Todd Morgan is the first name on the ballot, and therefore he will be candidate number 1. Bill Bates is the second name on the ballot, so therefore he will be candidate number 2, and so on. Because there are only 2 candidates, each candidate will answer all of the questions posed. So we'll begin with Mr. Morgan. Todd Morgan, for each county, Calvert and St. Mary's, what are your 2 top issues?
I think the biggest 2 issues I am worried about for both counties collectively is going to be the economy, first and foremost, and I think the second one is going to be crime and safety. If I look at both counties as a whole, the economy is obviously a huge impact to us today with inflation, rising gas prices, food prices, et cetera, and how do we counter that to make it more meaningful for all of us. Secondarily, I do worry about crime and safety. Crime is up. People are concerned about their own personal safety. What do we have to do to hopefully drop crime, promote more safety, promote more support to our police officers, our law enforcement officers, our schools, so kids feel safe, communities feel safe across the board. Thank you.
Mr. Bates?
2 top issues, Calvert and St. Mary's counties. First is infrastructure.
You'll have to speak up.
2 top
Thank-
issues. How
thank
about
you.
that? Okay. The 2 top issues for me for Calvert and St. Mary's counties are infrastructure, first being infrastructure, and secondly being education. I believe that the infrastructure that's necessary, beginning with the Thomas Johnson Bridge, the Solomon's Bridge, is essential, and that ties right in with the economy. If the bridge needs to be closed, it'll have a devastating effect on our local economies. The number of people that travel back and forth to either county during the day. Secondly, education, to work on continue to push forward the blueprint for Maryland, the current commission, and to make sure that that's implemented completely and funded completely to move forward. Again, that's going to have a direct impact on our economy and our future, and that's why it's titled the way it is, Blueprint for Maryland's Future, and it's essential that we continue with that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Bates, you get the next question first. Why would you be a good state delegate for District 29C?
I have 35 years experience with the Maryland Natural Resources Police. During my time with Natural Resources Police in my earlier years, I went to Annapolis and lobbied on behalf of Natural Resources Police officers and other officers around the state. We didn't have collective bargaining. It's where we had to go to get any kind of pay or benefits improved. So I spent my first 5 years lobbying to get a pay parity bill through with Natural Resources Police and the Maryland State Police. And after that was successfully concluded, we moved on to a 25-year pension system for the Natural Resource Police. And again, 5 years later, we were successful there. So I'm very familiar with the legislative process. I know my way around Annapolis. I know how the system works, and I know the process. So I think I have that unique ability. Besides that, with my military background, you're a problem solver. Thank you.
My turn? For the last 12 years, I've been a St. Mary's County Commissioner. In St. Mary's County, your term limited, so I can't run again. For the 6 years previous to that, I ran the Southern Maryland Navy Alliance, which is the political arm to make sure the base can work well with the community and work with state legislatures. I have been a businessman. I started and owned a small business with 3 other guys and became one of the most successful small businesses in St. Mary's County. I served on the MACO board, the legislative board, for the last 4 years, 3 years being part of the education subcommittee. I've been the chairman of the Tri-County Council for 5 of the last 12 years. And during that period of time, I've worked very successfully with the commissioners of both Calvert, St. Mary's, and Charles to try to work towards group efforts and things that they can do. I've testified numerous times in Annapolis on issues affecting all 3 areas, particularly St. Mary's and Calvert across the board. I have a very good working relationship with the commissioners over here and feel that, 40 years of experience as a DOD contractor, as a businessman, as an educator, and also and with the world that I'm in right now, I think I'm really well qualified to be your 29C delegate.
Thank you. Mr. Morgan, would you support changing state law regarding how county sheriffs are selected so that it is not a political decision but is based on experience and qualifications?
I think I'd like to hear what the people have to say about that. I think that the way that sheriffs have been elected in St. Mary's and Calvert County over the last few years has been fair. It has allowed the people to speak for the person they want to be able to represent them. I think that in that particular case of the sheriff, it is an elected position, so the commissioners don't have any say into what's going on. And I think that in looking at both counties, the sheriff's office has been fair, it's been balanced. But at the end of the day, folks, it's about the people. And what do the people want? It's not about what Annapolis wants, but it's what the people want. And as was said in the preface today, it's about voting and expressing your will and your desire, not to be told by Annapolis what you're going to do at the end of the day.
Thank you, Mr. Bates.
Would you repeat the
Same
question?
question. Yes. Would you support changing the state law regarding how county sheriffs are selected so that it is not a political decision, but is based on experience and qualifications?
The way that's worded, I'd have to say no. I would like to see it be a nonpartisan election, but I still feel it's essential that the people be involved in the process and understand the decision. And I think the other qualifications that were mentioned, they are being considered before people vote for the sheriff candidate. So the way that question's worded, I would not support that process. It sounds like they want them to be appointed, and I do not support that.
Okay, Mr. Morgan, even though this is a random selection, you get the first question again. You can flip a coin and get heads twice in a row.
Lucky me. Sorry, go choke it, John.
I know. How do you propose to support public school education? Do you fully support the blueprint for education?
I think the most important thing for education is the parent. And the parent needs to have the involvement in the school system to make sure they know what's going on. As I've said, I sat on the education subcommittee for MACO for the last 3 years, and we battled and back and forth on Kerwin. Kerwin is not perfect. Kerwin is not funded. Kerwin is not ready to be implemented. There's a lot of work to be done, and MACO's education subcommittee is firmly of the belief that MACO's not ready, or the Kerwin is not ready. Calvert and St. Mary's fiscally are close to getting there. When you look at Prince George's, when you look at Baltimore City, they're nowhere close to funding the mandates that Kerwin is going to push down. I believe the money follows the kid, and I've been a firm believer for 12 years. If you watched me, I believe money follows the kid. Money is not an administration and bureaucracy. The tenants have a great tendency to overwhelm the school system, the maintenance of effort requirements, the union requirements. It's tough, but I don't think Kerwin is ready yet.
Could you repeat the question, please?
How do you propose to support public school education? Do you fully support the blueprint for education?
The first part, I would definitely use the blueprint for Maryland as our means to achieving a better education system across the board. Yeah, it's not a perfect piece of legislation, and I don't think there's such a thing. It needs to be worked, but it is a tremendous step forward, and I believe it does truly have significant meaning to our future. Education is the key. We have to start to get our young people into school as early as possible, and that just sets them on a path to graduating and becoming a active participant in our communities once they graduate. So I fully support the blueprint for Maryland.
Thank you. Mr. Bates?
Yes.
Next question. What are you doing and/or will you do to protect and enhance voting rights? Legal no longer means legal. And legal no longer means what is moral or what is right.
I don't believe that, again, the legislature can compel people to think a certain way or be a certain way. I think our system, again, is a very good system, our election system, and it might need some refinement. Again, there's no perfect system out there. So I would just have to continue to address things as they come to light. I can't think of any specific incidents that would be addressed by a delegate. But if it came to light, I would definitely figure it out.
Okay,
I'd like you to repeat the question, please.
sure. What will you do and what are you doing now? What are you doing now and/or will you do to protect and enhance voting rights? Legal no longer means what is moral or what is right.
I think the sentence in the question should end with voting rights, because the second part of the sentence was an opinion to push you to an edge. I believe that when you look at the United States of America, it is the greatest democracy in the free world. Is everything perfect? The answer is no. But as far as voting is concerned, we have gone forward, we've gone backwards. We have the 1964 Voting Rights Act. It was not renewed. There's issues with that. There's both sides taking sides. But as far as I'm concerned, when I look at voting as a whole, you live in the greatest democracy in the free world. You have the opportunity, as was said previously, you have the opportunity to go vote. If you don't vote, don't speak up. If you don't vote, don't come yell at me as county commissioner what I'm an asshole I am. Sorry, it doesn't work that way. You have a right to vote, you have a right to speak up. And if you don't exercise your right to vote, please, please, as they said before, get out there and vote, because that is your opportunity to have a word.
Thank you.
Mr. Morgan.
Sorry about I have a little language problem sometimes.
Mr. Morgan,
Yes.
given your delay in getting here, this question is singularly appropriate for
guess I
you
know
to
what
be
it
the
is.
first.
How about that bridge?
How will you, well, slightly different, how will you get other delegates to help you get the funding for replacing the Thomas Johnson Bridge?
Great question. Here's the answer I've said consistently. For 12 years as county commissioner, we have pushed as the #1 transportation priority in St. Mary's County, the bridge. Calvert County has pushed the #1 transportation priority, or is the bridge. The Tri-County Council's #1 priority has been the bridge. The state has said the bridge is functional. The bridge is number 49 of 52 to be replaced. It is an $800 million bill. We have been to Annapolis. We have argued. Secretary Ports is down here. Secretary Rahm's been down here. They've spoken to your commissioners, to our commissioners, Tri-County Council. The bridge, unfortunately, is functional. And you can get as many delegates as you would like in Southern Maryland to support the new bridge. However, it takes a collective body in Annapolis, whether it be Prince George's, Baltimore City, et cetera, to put the Thomas Johnson Bridge as a priority over all the other infrastructure projects in the state. And to this point in time, I have not seen the political will of Annapolis, no matter how many people you get, to find $800 million to replace the Thomas Johnson Bridge, even if I was late.
Thank you. Mr. Bates.
I'm sorry, could you repeat it, just so I'm sure?
How will you get other delegates to help you get funding for the replacement of the Thomas Johnson Bridge?
Well, the delegates are just part of the process. For 8 years, we've had a Republican governor. For 8 years, we've had a Republican delegate for 29C. And for those 8 years, we've also had Republican commissioners in both Calvert and St. Mary's counties. And it doesn't appear that there's been any progress whatsoever. There's not a single survey flag or anything out there. Yet, you go to Charles County, and they're going to have a new bridge next year. While we've been sitting here with the difficulties we've been experiencing, they've been moving forward. So I'll go to Annapolis as a Democrat. I'll deal directly with the Democratic governor, which is most likely going to happen, and I'll deal with the rest of the Democrats in the General Assembly, and that's how I'll accomplish it.
Thank you. Mr. Bates,
Yes.
do you favor any changes in Maryland's laws on abortion? And if so, what?
Well, it's something that's constituent oriented. I personally don't see a need for any changes. I believe that it's an important personal right to every individual to be able to have control over their bodies and their health care and the things that happen to them. So I don't believe our laws currently in Maryland are infringing on that to any great degree. If they were and the constituents felt that they needed to be changed, I would definitely address it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Morgan.
Yeah, I want to go back to the bridge real quick. Let's remember, yeah, we have had an elected governor who's a Republican the last 8 years, but before that we had a governor named O'Malley. For a number of years we had a Senator Dyson, a Senator Bohannon, who were all Democrats, and they couldn't get the bridge either, so Mox Nix. As far as abortion is concerned, in 1992, the citizens of Maryland voted to make abortion legal. The Dobbs decision, aka Roe v. Wade, said basically under the Constitution, those powers non-enumerated to the federal government are enumerated to the states. So in this particular case, let's remember, abortion was legalized in Maryland in 1992. What happens at the end of the day is abortion is going to stay legal in Maryland. There will probably be more attempts to make it more, finding more access in more liberal ways. I think the governor vetoed a bill this year that was overridden by the Senate to provide money for healthcare practitioners and other people to perform abortions. And I'm sure when we get to Annapolis, as was stated before, this issue is going to be big to grant more access and more opportunity for abortion in the state of Maryland.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bates, what are your priorities for the environment and climate change issues in your district and in Maryland as a whole?
So for Calvert and St. Mary's counties, we're downriver from everything. So all the problems that are upstate wind up down in our neighborhood. And the Tucson River, the Potomac River, the Chesapeake Bay, all of it is essential to our local economies. The seafood that's harvested there, the tourism that happens because of it, the boating traffic that comes in to visit Solomon's and things like that. So I would continue to make sure that the programs that are in place currently to govern our environment are fully funded, adequately funded, and to make sure if anything else comes to light that needs to be passed for legislation, I would do that.
My turn? Thanks. Climate change used to be called global warming, and we've changed our definition to make it a little bit more soft. I think when you look at the two counties together, we have to look at some different aspects. I formed the Solar Task Force for St. Mary's County to ensure that the St. Mary's County was going to be able to find a way to meet its solar goal as established and pushed on us by Annapolis. I believe that for any type of firm energy policy to be intact, we have to consider nuclear energy. We have Calvert Cliffs, it's working. We have to consider the rising tide. I think that a lot of the things that come down from, I mean, we got a waste treatment plant in Baltimore that spews out 1 million gallons of raw sewage a day, and they can't figure that out, but they want to come down here and tell you your septic systems aren't any good. We have problems ahead, but we have to be realistic about how we're going to achieve those goals in a big macro environment of the state of Maryland that represents the Eastern Shore, the Western Panhandle, the Middle Counties, and in particular, how we at the end of St. Mary's and Calvert County are the great recipients of everything flowing down the river, into the bay, and ending up here. Had a sentence to finish.
Thank you. Mr. Morgan,
Yes.
what are your thoughts on public financing of campaigns And why are we stuck with a system that gets more and more expensive?
I do not support public financing of campaigns. I believe it's up to people to decide if they want to contribute money to campaigns, then they can contribute. Yes, the cost of a campaign continues to rise, but so does the cost of newsprint, so does the cost of social media, so does the cost of TV, and so does the cost of radio. And you have to use all those mediums if you're going to be able to reach the population. Because I could sit here and say, how many of you guys live in the 1st District of Calvert County? 1. Thank you very much. 2. So that's 2 people, 3. 3 people in this room will be able to vote for 29C. So if we
There are
don't have
2
a
people
mechanism
over
to get
here.
the stuff out, how do you get there? Thank you.
You forgot the 2 of us.
Are you 29C? Yeah. 5! Okay, 1 whole hand. Thanks, guys.
Mr. Bates, same question.
Good to see you guys, by the way.
Could you repeat it?
Yes. What are your thoughts on public financing of campaigns, and why are we stuck with a system that gets more and more expensive?
No, I don't agree that we should have public funding for campaigns. I really can't explain why we're stuck with any particular system other than nobody's asked for it to be changed. Again, that goes back to the voters. They don't like the system, they need to put that forward, and it needs to be changed on their behalf. So as already been stated, yeah, cost of printing, cost of advertising, constantly going up. So that's a cost. It's part of doing business as far as a candidate is concerned. So that's why we got the system now, as best I can explain. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Candidates, we will now give you 1 minute to make a summary statement characterizing your campaign's beliefs as to why residents here should vote for you.
And we'll start with Mr. Bates.
As stated, I have a 35-year career as a natural resource police officer. I've worked and lived in St. Mary's and Calvert counties. I currently live in St. Mary's, but I began my time in Southern Maryland in Calvert County when I moved here in 1985. Stayed in Calvert County for about 12, 14 years and moved to St. Mary's. My children were educated in the public school system. Both are graduates from Patuxent High School. I'm very familiar with the area. Being a natural resource police officer, I communicated. I had interaction constantly with all the communities and all the people here, the watermen on the river and everything. So 35 years of familiarity with the area and its issues and the people. That's probably my first and foremost qualification that allows me to be your delegate. Thank you.
Mr. Morgan?
Thank you. I want to thank, first of all, everybody for being here. League of Women Voters, all the sponsors over on the placards to my left. I've been a resident of St. Mary's County for over 40 years. And during those 40 years, I've been a businessman, small business to a big business. I've been a county commissioner. I've been a parent. I've done a whole bunch of other things along the way. In elections, we have to draw distinctions about relationships and things. Lines get drawn. We just had a whole new district drawn. 29C is a whole new category. But relationships are more than just the lines that you draw. For those 40 years or so, I've worked hard to gain people's confidence, their respect, and their trust. I've worked hard to get here to this position today, especially working with people in Epis over the last 40 years. I'm warned as you don't maintain a strong rapport and trust of your community, you're worthless. I want to be accessible. I want people to be able to pick up the phone and call me as they do now and say, Todd, I got a problem. How can I fix it? In St. Mary's County, it isn't just my 29C district, it's the whole county that reaches out and asks me for things. And I hope at the end of the day, you'll support me. I ask for your vote, I ask for your confidence on November 8th. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Hope next round has so much fun.
Okay. Bob Harvey and Mr. Perrick, please.
Are we supposed to take it? Are you going to change the name?
Okay, the candidates this evening for the office of State Attorney General of
No, no,
Calvert County,
No, no, no. State's attorney.
State's Attorney. You guys are so quality, I was going to promote you.
I don't want to be Attorney General.
State's Attorney of Calvert County are Bob Harvey and Rick Perrick. Again, the online application called random.org was used to select the order in which the candidates respond to questions posed. The candidates' numbers were determined by their order on the ballot. For example, 2 candidates are running for that office. Bob Harvey is the first name on the ballot, and therefore he is candidate number 1. Rick Perrick is the second name on the ballot, and therefore he is candidate number 2. Because there are only 2 candidates, each candidate will answer all of the questions posed. So, the first question is, do you believe that Calvert County Law Enforcement and Justice Administration is currently free of discrimination? If not, what is the most important area that needs to be fixed?
Mr. Harvey.
Well, to argue that there's no discrimination in law enforcement would be to ignore the realities of what's going on in our country. Of course there's discrimination. There's discrimination in everything that goes on. And I'm not prepared to ignore that at all. Those problems exist in every institution in our country, and they have to be identified and rooted out. We are working to do that. I am part of a Maryland Criminal Sentencing Commission. We're charged with the task now of determining whether or not there is racial bias in criminal sentencing in this state. And we're going to look at the statistics to determine whether there is, and if there is, we're going to make changes.
Thank you. Mr. Perrick.
Could you repeat the question, please?
Do you believe that the Calvert County Law Enforcement and Justice Administration is currently free of discrimination? If not, what are some of the most important areas to be fixed?
Thank you. As Mr. Harvey stated, there's always some discrimination throughout the system, right? So this question here, we're talking about both law enforcement as well as Justice Administration, which would include the state's attorney's office, which would include the law enforcement partners, the courts. So throughout that whole system, is there some discrimination throughout that system? Sure there is, right? We certainly see, if you go sit in court, you're going to see that the law is not applied equally throughout. The people that are being charged, the sorts of charges that are being had aren't the same, right? And so how do we fix that is, I think it starts with transparency. I think it starts with you putting crime data online where it's easily available for everyone. That way we can start holding our courts accountable, we can start holding our law enforcement accountable, and we can hold our courts accountable. So I think that's where it starts. Then we also move on to training, bias training, inherent bias training, those sorts of things, where we work both with our law enforcement partners as well as the state's attorney's office.
Thank you, Mr. Perrick. What is a veterans treatment court? How would it work? And have they been proven to positively impact the community and other places where they currently exist?
Thank you. Yeah, as an Army veteran, Veterans Treatment Court is something that is very important to me. That's why I went and I met with the Calvert County veterans community about establishing the Veterans Treatment Court. That is why I've met with George Owings about doing this. This is a program that is funded by the Veterans Affairs Department of the federal government. It's a grant-funded program. There's about 600 of these throughout the county, and they've shown themselves to be very efficacious in lowering folks from reoffending, right? So what happens is when you're in the military, folks will suffer from traumatic brain injuries, they'll suffer from PTSD, and they come from this structured environment into the outside world. Some of them have a hard time accommodating to the outside world. So Veterans Treatment Court provides them the services and the structure so that they can be successful and not reoffend. I'm very pro it, and once we get into office, it's something that's going to be #1 priority of mine, is getting that up and going for Calvert County's veterans.
Thank you. Mr. Harvey.
Well, I've been working on this issue now for probably 6 months. My opponent jumped on the bandwagon late in the game. What he didn't talk to were our judges. I went and talked to Judge Saunders in the district court and Judge Chanley in the circuit court, and I said, we'd like to try and do a veterans treatment court. And the first thing he said is, we don't have the numbers. We do not have the numbers in Calvert County to support a separate treatment court. He didn't bother to ask our judges. You're not going to have a treatment court unless our judges say you were going to have a treatment court. So what we've done is I've gone to Chief Judge Morrissey of the district court and said, Judge, let's identify when people come into the system whether or not they're veterans. He's agreed to do that across the state so we can identify who the veterans are, and once we identify the veterans, we can offer them services through what's called our mental health docket in the district court and our drug court in the circuit court. That's what I'm going to do, and I'm going to get it done.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Perrick, if the state's attorney's office absolutely had to cut expenses, what would you cut first?
So first, before I get to that, I just want to address the issue with Veterans Treatment Court. We know how many veterans are in Calvert County, right? There are about 7,000 veterans per the last census that we had. So we know the size of the population, and we can infer from that the percentage of those that we expect that would be committing or involved in crimes of some sort. Furthermore, the VA has similar numbers, although I would be all for the courts collecting some of that information. As far as cutting expenses, I think the easiest place for you to cut expenses now is by adopting the use of technology, right, and cutting down on paper usage. You can cut on postage, you can cut on copying costs. You can certainly do these sorts of things using technology to lower the state's attorney's budget.
What my opponent doesn't realize is that the state's attorney's budget doesn't include technology. The state's attorney's budget does not include any technology. Technology is run by the county. Our technology services are provided and funded for by the county. That's because it's cost-saving and effective for the county to run it for all the county agencies. We all have the same technology services. So I don't know what he's talking about, but he's not going to be able to do it because the county funds technology. We are getting new technology. We're getting a new case management system. It's called Odyssey. It's going to help us manage our technology, our data statistics, our case management, but it's funded by and provided for by it's not even part of the state's attorney budget, period.
Thank you. Mr. Harvey,
Yes.
in the aftermath of the Lea Clark case, what would you do differently?
Well, let me state first and foremost, because my opponent has been spreading disinformation, I had nothing to do with that case. That case happened when Mr. Rappaport was the state's attorney. The case was investigated under Mr. Rappaport's tenure. After Mr. Rappaport became a judge, the state's attorney's office was taken over by Jennifer Morton. Jennifer Morton agreed that the case should be shipped out to an outside prosecutor, and that's what happened. I had nothing to do with it. What I did do, however, in the aftermath of that case, my staff and myself developed a PowerPoint presentation. We went to each roll call Calvert County Sheriff's Office and we said, this is how you do it right. This is the way you do it in the future. You get a search warrant. If you want to draw blood in a case involving a fatality, you get a search warrant and you draw the blood and you do it the right way. They know how to do it now, and we've had another case, a similar situation, was prosecuted by my office and ended up working out just fine.
Mr. Perrick,
Can you repeat the question, please?
in the aftermath of the Lea Clark case, what would you do differently?
Thank you. So the Lea Clark case was the young lady that was unfortunately tragically killed over here in Darris Beach Road by an off-duty Calvert County Sheriff's deputy. I take a little offense to the fact that Mr. Harvey says he had nothing to do with this case when he, in fact, was this police officer's defense attorney just prior to him being appointed as state's attorney. The case ended up in a $600 fine for this officer during Mr. Harvey's term, and no steps. I mean, to say that what you're going to do about this issue is present a PowerPoint to one time to, police officers. Now, this needs to be an ongoing thing. What I would call for is I would call for the commissioners to hire an outside agency to conduct a thorough investigation from the moment the accident happened to the moment the jury verdict came in and figure out where along the line both of these, because this was the sheriff's office issue. This was a sheriff's office issue. This was a state's attorney's issue. State police was involved, right? So we got to get all of these agencies to figure out how we can do better in the future. We owe the people better than that.
Thank you. I would like to remind both candidates that this forum is intended to give the audience and give the average voter insights into your position. We really encourage you not to attack each other because that is not in the spirit of this particular forum. Mr. Perrick, what are your highest priorities for improvements in juvenile justice?
So in juvenile justice, I mean, first and foremost, we just had a change in the juvenile law, right? The law that juvenile justice is about getting these juveniles and getting them back so that they're good citizens of our county. So the first priority really is training, both with the sheriff's office, but also with our prosecutors to make sure that everyone understands the new laws. We need to provide work better with our partners, such as the school board, right? So when we talk to the folks at the school board, you know, they feel like the state's attorney used to, under Laura Martin, used to spend more time, have more contact with them, and that's kind of dropped off a little bit. We need to make sure that we stay on the same page to address issues that we're seeing now with things like cyberbullying and that sort of thing. So we need to make sure that we're working with our school partners or law enforcement partners to make sure that all those issues are being properly addressed.
Well, the juvenile justice system is broken in the state of Maryland. It's broken because the state of Maryland has not funded our Department of Juvenile Services. They have not provided the counselors that are needed. They have not provided the treatment centers, the treatment facilities that are needed. It's not a Calvert County problem, it's a state problem. And it's something that needs to be addressed and needs to be looked at. I have been out at each of our schools, high schools in Calvert County, to talk to our kids about juvenile justice, to let them know what the system is all about, to try and educate them as to what the criminal justice system is about. So that's being done, and we're going to do more of that this semester, this time around, with Ms. Dawn Lister, who runs the criminal justice program in Calvert County.
Thank you. Mr. Harvey,
Yes.
how would you promote accessibility to you for the public?
Well, I was thinking on the way here that I've done a pretty good job of community outreach. You know, we go out to the homeowners associations, we attend the neighborhood watch meetings, we are in the schools. I'm in a lot of these organizations. I go out all the time, but I haven't done a very good job of bringing people in. So I'm here tonight to propose that we have a Calvert County Crime Summit, that we bring people into the Calvert County State's Attorney's Office, community organizations, faith leaders, NAACP, and we listen to what you have to say that we need to fix, that we need to do better. So it's not just about outreach. We do outreach. We need to have input. So I intend to do that. As soon as all this election craziness is over with, we can start doing things like that.
Thank you. Mr. Perrick.
Thank you. So when I came to Calvert County, I was a law clerk in St. Mary's County, and Laura Martin recruited me over to the state's attorney's office. And Laura Martin is a mentor of mine, right? And so Laura, taught us that every phone call that came into her office, every letter that she got, every email that she got, all of those got responded to. When one of you citizens, or one of us citizens, calls into the state's attorney's office and wants to have an issue with the state's attorney, the state's attorney should take that meeting and discuss those issues, right? Furthermore, we should have involvement. We have great neighborhood organizations. We have great organizations like the NAACP, Concerned Black Women, Concerned Black Men. We must remain involved with those folks. We must use the tools that we have, social media, to reach out to folks. We got to have town halls, and more importantly, when we do have cases of note, such as the Lea Clark case or the other police officer where there's a lot of interest, we got to communicate to folks as to how the state's attorney's office is resolving them.
Thank you.
Mr. Perrick, what do you think are the most difficult parts of the state attorney's job?
Most difficult part of the state's attorney's job, I think, is having an ongoing, honest communication with the citizenry. What does that mean? That means that we don't use the grand jury to hide behind, right, when we got to take unpopular positions, right? So that means that if we choose not to go forward on a case, we need to just go out and communicate to the community that we're going to go forward or not go forward on a case. When something goes terribly wrong in court, like we saw with the Lea Clark case, we need to communicate with the public what went wrong and what we're going to do better in the future. And that is, it's hard. It's hard to stand up to that criticism. It's hard to face down to the folks that would have you do something different. But the law is the law, and the public needs to understand why it is that we're taking actions that we are, because otherwise it erodes the trust that the public has in us. It erodes the trust that the public has in the police officers that are out there. And the more trust that they have for us, the more trust they're going to have for law enforcement, and the easier we're going to make the lives of our police officers on the road.
Thank you. Mr. Harvey.
You know, for those of you who don't know me, I actually am the incumbent state's attorney. So I can tell you there are no easy parts to this job. It's a 24/7 job. You're never off duty. It's not unusual to get a phone call in the middle of the night about some crisis where the police need some advice or guidance. There are difficult decisions that are made every day. You have to decide on people's lives. Should somebody go to jail? Should somebody be prosecuted? It's a very, very difficult job. I've done it for the last almost 3 years now. I've done it before when I was in Prince George's County as the deputy state's attorney. There is no easy part. It's all difficult. There's no easy part. It's all difficult.
Thank you. Mr. Harvey,
Yes.
how is your campaign funded?
My campaign is funded by campaign contributions from people that support me, people that I know. I'd like to consider most of them to be my friends. I do have a large number of supporters that are lawyers, and I'm not ashamed to say that. The lawyers in Calvert County support me because I think they believe that I'm the best candidate. My opponent has received campaign contributions from lawyers as well. I don't support public funding, that previous question that came up. I think we have an obligation to obtain our own funds for our campaign, and we all have an obligation to report where we get them from. There's no secrets there. My opponent reports his campaign contributions, and I do likewise.
Thank you. Mr. Pierrick?
Can you repeat the question, please?
Yes. How is your campaign funded?
So my campaign is a grassroots campaign, right? So these are my neighbors, you know, or the people here, some people here in this room I see that have donated my campaign. They're police officers, they're teachers, they're nurses. Those are my campaign. Now, yes, when Mr. Harvey says a large number of his supporters are lawyers, he's talking about 87% or so of his supporters that people have donated money to him are criminal defense attorneys or their families, right? On top of this, there's a comment made that, it's because the local attorneys are supporting him. Well, go check those reportings are easily available. We can all go online tonight and go take a look, and you'll see that these are largely out-of-county attorneys, right? These are Prince George's attorneys and Rundle attorneys. There are a couple, one or two in this very courtroom right now. So my campaign is a campaign of the people, and that's how we're going to keep it. Sure, do I have a couple friends that are attorneys that gave us a couple dollars? Yes, but the vast majority are our neighbors.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Perrick, what are your highest priorities for improvements in juvenile justice?
Did we already? I think you already asked that.
I agree. That's been asked.
Yeah.
Asked and answered.
See, we agree on stuff sometimes.
Okay, I'll ask the next question. Mr. Pierrick, what attributes do you bring to this office that the voter needs to know before making a choice in the voting booth.
Thank you. So I'm an Army veteran. I'm very proud of my service. With that, I went through a lot of training, led folks. I have a law practice, Pyrrhic Law, here in Calvert County. It's a small firm, but we do have a staff. We have attorneys that have worked for us, and we've been very, very successful. I think it's important for folks to know that my dad was a big philanthropist. There's a clinic in Malawi named after him, the Pyrrhic Clinic, because he helped get that off the ground to help orphans, and that is the values that he gave to me, right? So ever since I was in high school, that's when I joined the Army. I've always been involved. I remain involved in our community. I am a commissioner here with the Calvert County Housing Authority because I think it's important that we house Calvert County's very large unhoused population. And so those things are important to me. I have kids in our Calvert County schools, and I think it's very important that we make them a safe place for all our children.
Thank you, Mr. Harvey.
Experience, experience, experience. I have over 40 years of experience as a criminal trial lawyer. I'm not talking about sitting behind a desk and writing wills and probate. I'm talking about being in the courtroom every day, either prosecuting or defending cases. I started out my career in Prince George's County, fighting the cocaine wars up there, prosecuted any number of serious cases, including over a dozen murder cases. I never lost one. After that, I came down here as a defense attorney. I represented the citizens of Calvert County who were charged with crimes, defending their rights, making sure that they got what was due to them in terms of rights in the criminal justice system. And now I am the state's attorney, prosecuting cases. I still do it. I still go to court. I still handle cases. And I've successfully and efficiently managed the largest law firm in Calvert County, which is the state's attorney's office, $2.6 million budget.
Okay, thank you. For both candidates, without repeating yourself again from the last question, anything that you didn't cover that you would like to cover, that you would like the audience to know about before they reach the voting booth? And we'll start with Mr. Harvey first.
Well, that's really an open-ended. There's so much to know. I'm sure my opponent has a lot he'd like to say too. I'm from the state of Maryland. I was actually born in D.C., lived there for 6 months, and grew up in Montgomery County. My family was always very active. My mother was very active in the League of Women Voters in Calvert County. We were taught the difference between right and wrong. I went to college at the University of Maryland. You talk about social activism, social justice. People forget I grew up in the 60s and 70s in a time of social upheaval. I was at the University of Maryland during the Vietnam War protests. I know what it feels like to get tear gassed, by the way. I was on the Mall for the Poor People's March in 1968. But when it comes to crime and injustice, that's a different story, and my job is to protect the people.
Thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Pyrrhic?
Thank you. So I think it's important for folks to know that I was a prosecutor here in Calvert County. Some of the questions tonight had to do with juvenile justice. I did all the juvenile justice prosecution in Calvert County for a number of years before moving up to Prince George's County, where I worked in their major crimes division. There I handled every sort of case from very serious assaults, first-degree assaults, all the way up to attempted murders. I also am a trial attorney. Was in court today in Calvert County and handled a number of matters. I've appeared before all our courts here regularly, to include the district court, the circuit court, and the juvenile court. I have a bachelor's degree in public administration, which I think is going to serve me well in the management part of this job, increasing the morale of the state's attorney staff and our law enforcement partners. I know what it feels like to be tear gas because the Army sent me into a box full of tear gas, and I'm lucky that there aren't any more pictures of that hanging around.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen, for your time and your responses.
You get a closing statement? Or closing statement?
Well, we thought that it would have
That was your
duplicated.
closing statement.
We thought it would have duplicated what you've already said.
Okay.
You mean I wrote all this stuff down and I don't even? All right.
Well, thank you. Thank you, League of Women Voters.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, sorry. Can I take my notes?
Okay. Oh, I'm so sorry. I gotcha. There you go. Thank you. Thank you.
Problem of getting these questions randomly and
Yes. Yes, please. Thank you. Would you like water?
I would love one. Thank you so much.
And there? Would you like a bottle of water?
No, thank you. This one's not open. I'll take
No.
this one. Yeah.
Okay.
yeah.
Hello there.
It's getting ready. Getting ready.
I know, and there was a big.
We're going to try to warm it up in here.
I like it. I like it.
I don't know if I'm scared or cold. Sit on my hands, warm them up for a minute.
Okay.
Okay, it should be warming up in here.
Yeah.
Whoops. Okay, the candidates this evening for the office of Calvert County Board of Education are Lisa Grennis, Camille Khaleesi, Tracy McGuire, and Jana Post. The online application called random.org was used to select the order in which the candidates respond to the questions posed. The candidates' numbers were determined by the order on the ballot. For example, there are 4 candidates here tonight who are running for this office. Lisa Grennis is the first name on the ballot, and therefore she will be candidate number 1. Camille Khaleesi is the second name on the ballot, and therefore she will be candidate number 3. Number 2. We do need to get it warmer in here. And so on. The application randomly selects the order in which candidates answer the questions. So, Ms. Khaleesi, you'll answer the first question. How will you work to ensure Calvert County Public School staff can safely work to provide every student representation in the classroom? With candidates calling teachers groomers and parents seeking to have teachers fired for supporting diversity, it is a scary time to be an educator.
So for me, it's about making sure that teachers know that the avenues that are already available to them for them to voice what's going on in their classrooms, the administration within CCPS, the administration within their schools, HR departments, principals, etc., are on board and doing their jobs to hear them out when they come with their concerns. So that's like one level or one area of it. The other area of it is in making sure that they're comfortable coming with their concerns and try to give them different mechanisms of coming with their concerns, because not everybody's comfortable just coming direct by themselves to the principal. They need to know that things are happening within the community of teachers around them. So trying to put into place just different avenues for different types of people, different types of teachers to be able to communicate what's going on with them, the same as I would want to be available to students.
Thank you. Ms. Grennis?
I think the number one thing we have to realize is that teachers need to feel supported, but parents also need to have their voice and issues and concerns acknowledged. And we're having a hard time finding that unity between parents, teachers, Board of Education, superintendent. Everything seems to be falling apart, and it is heartbreaking because this is about unity. This is about us working together for the good of children, and we need to get back to that. I am concerned about the children, and when we put the children as the number one priority, all these other things need to take a back seat.
Thank you. Ms. McGuire?
So I believe that school board members have a responsibility to tell the community how good the teachers are, to tell the community what educators do, so that they understand what happens in classrooms. I think a lot of the criticism that is being thrown around nationally and even here in Calvert County is not really connected to what happens in classrooms. It's not really what's happening in school. And so I think it's the school board's responsibility to communicate with the public about what happens in school. It is true that the school board also has a responsibility to enforce its policies, to make sure that teachers are aware of and following the policies. So there is an oversight function there, but I do think that the school board has a responsibility to be cheerleaders for public education, and that includes public school teachers.
Thank you. Ms. Post?
So I think it's important to understand how we got here and why our community and our school system seems to be so disconnected. I think that in and of itself needs to be identified, and then from there we need to be able to come together and have some meaningful discussions about what is most important for our students and our teachers and all the other supporting staff, including our bus drivers. Ensuring that the policies are consistently adhered to is a number one priority, in my opinion. It seems that there's a number of things that go on, and they're very different from school to school. And the internet is a way for parents who are feeling desperate to communicate that when they're not feeling that they got the support that they needed from their administration or teachers. I also think it's important that that be the first line, and that all the parents know that they should go to the school and they should talk to the teacher first, and they should talk to the administration before they go to the Board of Education. Thank you.
Okay. Ms. McGuire, over 10% of students have some sort of special education needs. How will you guide policy to give those students meaningful participation and full access to the curriculum? How do you define free and appropriate education in the least restrictive environment?
So I have a friend whose son has autism, and she told me once, if you meet my son and learn about his autism, you've learned about one child's autism. And so the needs of each child have to be met in the IEP meeting. The policies that frame around that are to make sure that the resources are available, that the IEP team is working with the parent. And I know that that's very frustrating because sometimes that staff changes and the parent ends up being the only consistent person in the IEP meeting trying to meet a child's needs. So we need really good communication. If the team is changing, someone needs to communicate to the new team members what everyone else already knows. And that's going to be part of helping meet those students' needs. And I believe in inclusion for all students, but we have to identify for students it doesn't work for. But we start with inclusion and then work our way towards maybe a more restrictive environment if that's what that child needs. Thank you.
Ms. Galisi?
Can you repeat that question, please?
Over 10% of students have some sort of special education needs. How will you guide policy to give these students meaningful participation and full access to the curriculum? How do you define free and appropriate education in the least restrictive environment?
The most important part of the free and appropriate public education for me is the appropriate, and in the least restrictive environment is in the least. So what's really necessary to help support those children, as well as non-special education children, is understanding that they have individualized needs. So like with what Tracy just said, if you meet one child with autism, you know one person's autism, but that's the same with all of you. Like, you all have particular needs that you bring to your work, that you bring to, you know, things that you do, and you want people to understand what helps to meet your need. And I feel like that's what's necessary in the special education realm. More communication, consistency, more flow of information, so that when the teachers pass through, that not any one teacher has to go back and learn everything about that kid, because there's already information available to them and resourced and time available for them to understand and learn what was in the previous IEP, what the next specialist is working with, and all of that. So I think that there can be structures put in place in the policy to help create a system where information can flow more freely and consistency from teacher to teacher and other staff as well. Yeah.
Thank you. Ms. Grennis, the same question, please.
We want to put our special education children in the least restricted environment. It sets them up for success. But not all children are set up for success in a general education classroom. What looks good on paper is not always necessarily what works. And that's what we have to keep in mind. We need to be listening to the teachers as to whether the inclusion is benefiting the child. If it's not benefiting the child, but we have the perfect data saying we're doing these inclusion programs, no one's winning. Once again, go back to what's in the best interest of the children. Supporting students with special needs is more than just inclusion. It's about tailoring the instruction to meet the individual needs. If that means in a classroom, that's where the child belongs. If it means in a pull-out program, that's where the child belongs.
Thank you. Ms. Post.
So, free. I don't really know that it's free. But I would say that it is really important, number one, to listen to the teachers and the educators, and also to listen to the parents, because I think that they work with those children intimately, and obviously the parents know. And what might work for one child certainly doesn't work for another. I would say, in terms of least restrictive environment, again, I agree with what everybody else said. There is no one-size-fits-all approach, because all of these children have individualized needs. I would also say that the policies or programs that may be implemented or cut based on funding or other things, it would be important to talk to parents. For example, seclusion. I've had a talk with a parent who had a child who was really overstimulated by getting off a bus and needed to be secluded. That was an important part of that child's daily activity. So if you're cutting programs where those things aren't there, it's important to understand how it impacts other students. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Khaleesi, do you support comprehensive sex education for teens?
In short, yes. Yeah,
No
that's
answer.
all I need to say about it.
Okay.
I have a team. I appreciate that some of their education takes place within the school system, and I also appreciate that the rest of their education, and hopefully what's most impactful to them, comes from me at home and our family. But being reinforced with other information, whether I agree with it or not, it's not my job to mandate what goes in their ear, because I can't control society when they walk out the door. But what I can control is having the conversation with them at home to either reinforce what I believe and what our morals and values are, or what we don't believe they are. So, yeah.
Okay, Ms. Grennis? Thank you.
I have downloaded the Family Life and Human Sexuality standards that could be coming, or I should say will be coming to Calvert County. And I understand that there are things that children in the middle school and high school need to be exposed to that elementary children do not. And that's what really bothers me. If you go on, or I will have these available for you, some of the things that they're doing, parents do not want. Now, I'll admit, some parents do want it, but we have got to be able to protect the children if a parent does not want it for their child in these early years. So, you know, I believe parents need to play a role in what their children are being exposed to in the school system.
Thank you. Ms. McGuire?
Yes, I support it. Human sexuality is too powerful to be ignorant about it.
Thank you. Ms. Post?
So I feel like this is a trick question. I will tell you that do I think that it is important to educate children at an appropriate age about certain things? Yes. Do I think that that's the role that it should that health class or you know somewhere else that it should be in a classroom? Yes. Do I think that it should be left up to an interpretation of a teacher who has a certain set of beliefs? No, I do not. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Post, our society doesn't seem to value trade schools the same as college experience. How will you grow and increase student interest in apprenticeships and trade schools?
So I think that it's important to kind of take away that stigma of going to trade school is lesser than going to college and getting a four-year degree. There are many, many, many successful people without a college degree, and it is the trades is it's a dying field. We need carpenters, we need plumbers, we need HVAC technicians, we need all of those people. That's how we sustain. That's who fixes our house, who fixes our cars, who makes our air conditioning work, the plumbing, things like that. So, and those are viable, productive citizens because they get to give back to the community and help. So I think that by encouraging more children and exposing them to the programs such as the CTA and helping them understand the value in that would maybe help more people have an interest in that. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Khaleesi.
Ooh, I feel like I'm first or second every time.
It's random.
I think that I actually agree with Ms. Poston saying that it should be destigmatized as much as possible, but I think that needs to be done by making sure that any conversation that's about going to college as a future, you should also be talking about going to trade school as a future. When we show the financial outlook or talk about financial wellness and how having a college education plays into that, you need to also conversely show what it looks like when you go to trade school and how that changes the map, where you might grow faster sooner and acquire less debt versus, what the other side looks like. But I think that also just increasing opportunities for the students to try out trade school stuff earlier on. So the same way you can kind of start playing volleyball in middle school, but you can't be on a JV or varsity team until high school. If they can start doing more of that in earlier school, then that might help them to know it's something once they want to do when they get into higher education. Because unfortunately in higher education, once they pick the track, they don't really get to divert from it or play in the other space.
Thank you. Ms. McGuire.
So for a lot of the CTA programs in Calvert County Public Schools, you have to make a decision like your freshman year. And so I know that the CTA has field trips with middle schoolers, trying to engage them in it, get them excited about it. I think the people who have to be persuaded are parents. They have to be persuaded that this is a good option for their child. And we also need to persuade, and I'm sorry, high school counselors need to be talking about this as a very viable alternative to college. Going to CTA, learning a trade, does not mean you can't go to college. You can do both. But the idea has to be that parents are invested in it, and I know the kids are, because they come after middle school when they go to that field trip, they're all like, oh yeah, I'm gonna do these things. But parents are like, no, you have to go to college. So I think we need to communicate, and this is not just a CTA communication, I think it's a school board job to make parents aware of and to talk about it in positive ways and bring people along. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Ms. Grinnis?
Well, could you repeat that question? Because I don't think I agree with it.
Okay. Our society doesn't seem to value trade schools the same as college experience. How will you grow CTA and increase the student interest in apprenticeships and trade schools?
Okay, well, I guess I personally don't agree with that, because I think our Career and Technology Academy is phenomenal, and I am very proud that my son went through it. So, it gave him the option. He went there fully prepared to be college bound, tried nursing, it wasn't for him, switched over to fire safety, and got certifications where he could have come out of high school ready to work for the fire department. I think it's phenomenal. So I think the biggest misunderstanding, though, is people think that if their children go to the Career and Technology Academy, that they are not college bound. Some are, some aren't. Either way, it's okay. Some children go to the building because the materials needed are at a specific location, where the Career and Technology is also happening right in our high school buildings. So I don't think it has a negative stigma. I may be wrong, but I think it's phenomenal.
Thank you.
Ms. Post, the Blueprint for Maryland's Future is the most important legislation regarding education in 60 years. How will you ensure that Calvert stays on course implementing with Fidelity?
So I think that, as previous folks had mentioned, the blueprint is not perfect, and there are certainly there's some room for improvement. I think in that blueprint specifically, identifying what it's going to take to fund it, first of all, because that is not really known at this point, and secondly, how it's going to impact our students and our class sizes, and then thirdly, or at the same time, how it's going to impact taxpayers, right? Because we know at some point there's only going to be so much. We're already funded millions over the maintenance of effort. So if the school teachers are going to be paid, $10,000 or $15,000 more, and I'm not saying that they shouldn't, and the starting salary is going to be increased as well, it should. I don't disagree with any of those things. I think we really have to understand how we're going to do that so that the least impact is on the teachers and the staff and the students ultimately. Thank you.
Ms. McGuire?
So built into the legislation is a implementation accountability board. I think I said that backwards, accountability implementation board. That's going to monitor all of the school systems. The school systems are going to be required to submit what back in the day in the Thornton era was called the master plan. And the master plan, if you ever wanted to know anything about Calvert County Public Schools and what they were doing, all you had to do was read the master plan. It was the best reading as a school board member. And that is monitoring whether the funds are being used appropriately. And if a school system does use funds inappropriately, they get tagged on it and they have to change what they're doing to correct it. So I have great confidence in the implementation piece of this. And the school board has a responsibility to review those reports before they go to the state to make sure that they're complete. And so that's what I would be doing for that.
Thank you. Ms. Grennis?
My biggest concern with the blueprint is the money. If there's a pot of money, it can only go so far. And my biggest fear is that when money goes for one thing, it's being taken away from the classrooms. Is this going to mean larger classroom sizes, fewer special education teachers, fewer psychologists? Where is that money going to come from? Are taxes going to be raised? There's a lot of concerns. And it's also a constantly changing document. I've gone to several board meetings where dates get changed. So we don't even know what we're truly dealing with yet. We have like an idea of what it is, but we don't really have specific details yet. So,
Thank you, Ms. Khaleesi.
I think my answer to this question is going to be somewhat simple in how to ensure that we stay on the course. We need to make a plan and then work the plan. Like, we spend a lot of time, I think that for both sides of people that support the blueprint and people that don't support the blueprint, both of them are saying it's about the money. And yes, that's true. It's going to be very difficult to figure out where all of the money is coming from. And yes, that's a piece of it. But the elements of the plan that the money that needs to fund, that doesn't change. Like, those elements are still elements that would make a superb school system. So I don't see why we can't still work on planning how we would address the blueprint, whether it's fully funded or not. How are we going to address it? What steps are we going to take? Then how do we make sure that we're accountable to the steps that we said we're going to take, and focus on that, absent of the distractions that come up from other things, if that's really one of the priorities of how we want to move forward to become a better school system or continue to improve as a school system.
Thank you.
Ms. McGuire, how can Calvert County Public Schools at the district level minimize the school-to-prison pipeline with drug abuse and violence present in the schools?
So the drugs are coming from homes. Like, we're not offering them as students come through the door. And so I look at the community and I say, help, right? Your children are coming into our schools and they're bringing drugs with them. Can you as parents stop that? Can we work together to stop that? With regards to the violence, you know, acting out is when you are in an extreme situation and you feel under threat. So if we have students who feel threatened and are responding with violence, we need to investigate what's causing that. Children who are hungry, angry, tired, or scared are not going to respond well to any stimulus that overwhelms them. So these are all things that a school board we would need to be addressing. Thank you.
Ms. Post?
So I think that we can continue to encourage our SROs to be mentors and to have more opportunity to be in the schools and to communicate and interact with the students. I also think that it is important to provide additional, over and above what's in the health curriculum, or to add something to it about drug abuse and drug addiction. And for example, DARE doesn't have they don't have an opioid section. So looking at what is being taught, and then making sure that we are educating our children about the dangers of all the drugs, even experimenting, because in this day and age, you know, one time and that could be the end of it. It could kill you. I also think that appropriate disciplinary actions and then follow through, even when you know some of the parents want to be difficult, but encouraging them continuously to be involved and to remain consistent. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Grennis?
wow, that's really a tough one. I can tell you that I think the most crucial thing a teacher can do is building relationships with students. Even if a child is not academically successful, when a child respects and admires a teacher, they make better choices. But there's only so much we can do as far as them getting into drugs. You know, I believed in keeping my children very active, putting them in different sports, different types of things. I felt that they didn't have time to get into trouble. So I would love to see ways to be able to get children bused home from activities, especially the children who need to be in these activities.
Thank you. Ms. Khaleesi?
Can you repeat the question, please?
Yes. How can Calvert County Public Schools at the district level minimize the school-to-prison pipeline with drug abuse and violence in the schools?
I really think that that's one of the places where, to something was posted earlier, we need to have some unity and greater communication and continue education, and just remove some of the labeling and the stigmatizing that happens to children who get caught up in violent situations, who get caught up in drug situations. You can be the most educated. I know a lot of valedictorians that smoke crack. Like, I'm sorry, there's nothing about your standing in class or your standing in quote unquote life that's gonna stop you from trying something, doing something. That's why it's called try. People try things. And I think that we need to come together with how we want to address these things. I think it needs to be about the student when it comes to these things and not about the parents and what you feel, you know, from one person to another. I think we need to back the school's policies on things, but also we need to make sure that those policies allow for understanding that they're young and there are things that will be tried and we need to navigate their brains through that.
Thank you. Ms. Grennis, how would you support a parent of an LGBTQ plus child who came to you with a concern for their child?
Could you repeat that?
How would you support a parent of an LGBTQ plus child who came to you with a concern for their child?
I would listen to their concern. You know, I want to tell you that I support the LGBTQ community in getting a good education. That's my top priority as a teacher, a former teacher, and a board member. That is our top priority. I support all children being treated with dignity and respect. And if it's not happening, we need to address it.
Thank you. Ms. Post?
So I agree with Ms. Grennis. I think that we could listen to concerns, but you know, as an educator, we do have a priority, and that is to help the kids and to educate them. I also think that as an educator specifically, if I'm a math teacher, perhaps I'm not the best skilled in addressing certain concerns, but I could be the best at finding adequate resources or exceptional resources for that parent and that child. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. McGuire?
So I'm going to answer this question assuming that someone has approached a school board member with concerns about their child in school, not someone coming to me, a close friend speaking to me personally about their own child. If someone came to me, I would listen to their story. I would go to the superintendent. I would ask the superintendent to investigate what's happening with this child. Is this child being treated badly in school, either by staff or other students? It happens. And then I'm going to ask the superintendent to fix it. That's the superintendent's job. And so if there is a school where children are being ostracized or feel like they don't belong, then the superintendent needs to fix that.
Thank you. Ms. Khaleesi?
As a board member, it would be your job to support all of the students within the school system, period, is the very simple and easy question. But I mean, simple and easy answer, but if you say that you're gonna support all of the students, then that means you need to be making some effort to understand those communities and learn about them before they ever even come to you. You cannot tell me that you can support my special needs child if you've never read any piece of literature or information about special needs children. Same goes with the LGBTQ plus community. You can't say that you support them and you've not done anything to learn or understand those communities. If a child or a student comes to you from that community and you don't understand what type of impact you can have from dead naming them, how are you going to support them? So I think my answer to that question is really like, if you say that you're going to support them or support any of the students within our community, you need to know what students are in our community and learn things about them. And it doesn't mean you're going to know anything, but you're going to be modeling and showing for them that I care because I'm trying to understand something about you before you even get to me.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. McGuire. Calvert County is home to many types of families and people with diverse backgrounds. Do you believe students deserve to see themselves reflected in the books that are in the classrooms and in the school libraries?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that the reading material available to children should reflect our community. And I have great confidence in the educators who work in our libraries to make those selections, to make sure those books are available. And yes, diversity matters everywhere, but particularly for young people and what they get a chance to read.
Thank you. Ms. Grennis?
I personally am against book banning. I do believe that the librarians are following the guidelines established, but children under 18 should have access to age-appropriate books, and the book should not be of a sexual nature. Parents monitor movies, music, software, and other things, and we're at a point where now some books need to be monitored. I'm going to tell you a very simplistic problem that we're having with books. You could have a book about two dads raising a girl. Doesn't matter what the plot is. One teacher could use that book saying, look, boys and girls, all families look different. Teacher number two could say, look, boys and girls, she has two dads because daddies can have babies too. And teacher number three could say, I think this book's too controversial, I'm not going to use it. So then it comes down to the discretion of the teacher as to how she's going to use the book. And that's what's getting scary.
Thank you. Ms. Calisi?
Yes, I agree that students should see themselves reflected in the books in classrooms until we can get to the point where the teacher population and the staff population are completely directly reflecting what's in the school systems. The books are the next easiest thing. I hear the concerns about what books or what people feel books should and shouldn't be in classrooms, and honestly my response to that is there's no age discrimination when it comes to trauma. Like, there have been very young children that have experienced a lot of trauma, drug abuse, rape, murder, dealing with divorced parents, dealing with different things, and they need to have a way to be educated that helps them to get through those things, and books are one of the means or mediums in which we do that. Again, yes, if parents want to control or restrict or encourage whatever they want based on what they feel needs to be taught to their child, they should be able to do so. And they should be able to say what they don't want. But that doesn't take away from the children who need those things and get those things from within the school system.
Thank you, Ms. Calisi. Ms. Post?
I guess it wouldn't be appropriate for me to say what Lisa said, but I echo all of the things that she said. But I also would like to mention that I don't think this is a question of we think that children shouldn't have access to books, especially if there are books that would be helpful. I think that it's that all children shouldn't have access to all books, and that there are other avenues to which a parent or a healthcare professional or whomever could provide a book to a child without it being accessible in a public school library. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll have closing statements now. I'm going to make that clear, Mr. Harvey. I apologize. I apologize, but maybe one of them would like to have your notes. Anyway, you're going to have 1 minute, candidates, for closing statements, and we're going to start with Ms. Grennis first.
Thank you. First, I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this event, and all of you who are coming to be informed voters, and everyone watching at home. I'm a retired Calvert County public school teacher who cares about our children. If elected, I will bring a common sense approach to our schools that will benefit our students, and more importantly, give them an education they need to succeed. To achieve this goal, I'm also committed to being a voice for our parents. Having been both a teacher and a parent, I know the critical role that both play in this process. That's why I'm seeking your vote. It's all about making our schools the best system possible. It's important for board members to listen and to respect all opinions in order to do what's best for our students. Even if we don't agree with each other, we need to be able to sit at the table and have calm, rational conversations.
Thank you. Ms. McGuire?
So throughout this whole campaign, I have been talking about my goal of a world-class school system. A world-class school system where all students are welcome, where they believe the adults in the building are there to help them achieve their best selves. A world-class school system is a place where teachers want to teach because they're well compensated, respected in the community, and respected by the school administrators. And a world-class school system is a school system where the administrators and the superintendent's office seamlessly support those activities for educators and students. I believe that the choice for this election is very clear. You can elect candidates whose campaigns have been focused on vilifying teachers and excluding students, or you can vote for a candidate whose goal is a world-class school system and has a plan to get us there. My name is Tracy H. McGuire. I want a world-class school system. I've got a roadmap. I ask for your vote. Tracy H. McGuire for Calvert County Public Schools.
Thank you. Ms. Post?
So I am a lifelong resident of Calvert County. I attended and graduated from a Calvert County Public High School. I also have 4 children that attend Calvert County Public Schools now. I am fair and hardworking, and I firmly believe that there's always room for negotiation. There's always a way to come to the table and have a conversation. I also believe that the purpose of a local school board is to carry forth what the people want, what the needs are of this community, not to rubber stamp everything that comes from the state. And I believe that parental involvement is a large part of that, and listening to them. So it is important that you vote for change, vote for new people on the Board of Education to represent the interests of the students, the parents, and the teachers. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Khaleesi?
Well, I think this will likely be the last forum before the before the election. Thank you all for coming out. My campaign sign really says most of what you need to know about me. At the top of it, it says mom, listener, leader, advocate. While I want you to support me and vote for me, I really want you to sit and think to yourselves, not about which one of our, political leanings you all support, or, who said something that you like versus you didn't like. I want you to think about your child or your family member's child that may be in the school system, and they get themselves into trouble and, bring a drug into school, or use a drug, or have a violent act, or have their grades start slipping, or find out that they've gotten diagnosed with some type of learning difficulty. And I want you to look at the people up on this panel and think about what they've said to you and how they've communicated with you, what questions they've answered, which they haven't, how they've moved around. And then you vote based on who you feel would actually listen to you, would actually try to work with you, and would actually do what is necessary or what you feel is proper to get your student what they need in this county.
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies. Thank you for... Now, although this ends the forum, it doesn't end, it ends the candidate part of the forum. It doesn't end the forum. There is a speaker that we are going to have address us. His name is Mr. Ralph Watkins. He's from the Maryland League of Women Voters. Ralph has extensive knowledge of the voting process and will be able to provide you with important information about the ballot referendums this year. As a personal note, I heard his presentation 2 weeks ago. It's extremely worthwhile. I encourage you to stay and listen. At first you think ballot referenda, what do I care about that? Think about the subjects he's going to be addressing and the implications, and it's everything from marijuana to structure of the state Supreme Court. So thank you, Mr. Watkins. We look forward to hearing your presentation, sir.
Great, thank you very much. Thank you all for showing your interest in government in Calvert County and in the state of Maryland. I will be merciful to you and try to hit just the highlights of the ballot questions that you're going to face. After you've finished voting for Board of Education, you're going to run into 5 statewide ballot questions. I encourage you to go to our website, vote411.org. We have much more detailed information there on responses from candidates for office, but also arguments for and against each of these ballot questions I'm going to be describing for you very briefly. So first, ballot question number 1. You may not know this, but the highest court in the state of Maryland is called the Court of Appeals. In most other states, as well as the federal government, the highest court is called the Supreme Court. Supreme, we figured that out. That means highest court. Concern has arisen because when people cite decisions of the Maryland Court of Appeals, for people not from Maryland, they'll think, oh, that's some mid-level court, that's not the final decision. So, question number 1 would amend our state question, if you vote yes, our state constitution would be amended so that the highest court will now be called the Supreme Court of Maryland, and the judges will be called justices, and our mid-level Court of Appeals, which peculiarly is called the Court of Special Appeals, is going to be changed to the Appeals Court of Maryland. But I think the judges of our Court of Appeals, our Supreme Court, will still get to wear the red robes. I don't know whether you know that, but justices of our Court of Appeals wear red robes. It's very striking when they're in a meeting together. Okay, so you probably won't get passionate about changing the name of the court, but that is what your first decision is going to be. The second question, ballot question number 2, is a bit more technical, but you might possibly be passionate about it. The Maryland Constitution requires that any delegate or state senator must have a residence in the district they are representing. A situation arose in which a candidate moved out of the district but kept the house or apartment in the old district and continued to represent it, saying, well, I still have a residence there. Question number 2 was proposed by the state legislature, and it proposes to amend the Constitution to say that you must maintain your primary place of abode. Not just your weekend apartment, not just your vacation house, where you live most of the time. So, if you vote yes on that, we will amend the Constitution, and it will be more specific to maintain your primary place of abode and not just a residence. All right. Question number 3. Technical, But again, this is one you might get passionate about. And there are arguments on both sides. Seriously, I encourage you to go to vote411.org or the voter's guide. The voter's guide for Calvert County is posted. I don't know whether it's on the Calvert County website, but it is on the State of Maryland, the League of Women Voters of Maryland website. And that is lwvmd.org. And look for voters' guides. And you will see Calvert County there. You can read all of this in detail. So what are you going to get passionate about question number 3? You didn't even know you were going to get passionate about this. In Maryland, in a civil case, if less than $15,000 is at stake, I'll put it that way, $15,000 or less is actually the way it's phrased, you do not have a right to a jury trial in a civil case. I sue you over here for $14,999. I can't demand a jury trial, and he is the defendant, can't demand a jury trial. And maybe I'm somebody in the community that has a really terrible reputation, and you'd really like a jury trial. You can't get one. However, if it's over $15,000 currently, you have a right to a jury trial. In Maryland, most of the civil cases for, and I'm going to forget, for $30,000 or less are heard in the district court. And I see somebody an attorney, practicing attorney here, who's going to leap up if I make a mistake here. But the district court has very simple rules for pretrial preparation, what lawyers call discovery. So if in this imaginary lawsuit, I claim I was injured by a garden rake carelessly left on the sidewalk in front of his house. The defense attorney could ask for, if we go into circuit court, if we're over the threshold and we go into circuit court because we've demanded a jury trial, and in Maryland, only the circuit court has jury trials. The district court are all trials before a judge. The rules are different in circuit court, and you can ask for a lot more discovery. I don't know, maybe he'll ask for my experience with garden tools generally. Do I step on them a lot? Or he'll have a deposition of me. He'll have a deposition of my doctor. Pretty soon, the attorney's fees and the expert witness fees have gone over $30,000. Okay. So it makes a very big difference where this right to a jury trial, what the dollar amount is. This proposal in the legislature is putting in front of us, question number 3, is to increase the amount from $15,000 up to $25,000. So you can only demand a jury trial if more than $25,000 is being sought. And I encourage you again, read Vote 411's description, because start to think about how much public resources are you devoting to a dispute that's really only over $25,000. On the other hand, the right to a jury trial, we think, is one of the most important things in the American judicial system. So maybe we think, that's pretty important right. I'm not comfortable with raising the dollar threshold. So this is one where, again, you could get passionate about it. I encourage you to, talk with people, think this one through. Question number 4, you've probably heard about, maybe. Question number 4 would amend the state constitution to provide that an individual in the state who is at least 21 years old may use and possess cannabis. Okay. There are lots of arguments for and against, and I have heard from some people who thought that we didn't give strong enough arguments for, and people who thought we didn't give strong enough arguments against. So I think we probably hit it about right in the middle, although perhaps there may be arguments we overlooked on either side. But so that is question number 4, legalization of cannabis. And finally, question number 5. This is another one that I think you may not get passionate about. It's painfully technical. That is to authorize in Howard County to essentially eliminate the orphans court judges and assign all of those cases to the circuit court. Okay. In Maryland, we have 24 local jurisdictions, and under our Constitution, every local jurisdiction has an orphans court. 3 judges elected for 4-year terms. They are nominated on party slates, which is unusual because most of our judges are not nominated by parties. And the Constitution, I said, it has orphans court in each of the 24 jurisdictions, and then it says except Montgomery County and Harford County. In both Montgomery County and in Harford County, years ago, they decided we don't need an orphans court. The orphans court judges are not required to be attorneys except in, I think, 2 of our counties, whereas the judges of the circuit court are required to be attorneys. And they're selected through a merit selection process. A panel of attorneys and other citizens interviews people, makes recommendations to the governor before they take office, and then they'll appear later on your ballot. So the procedures for choosing them are very different. I will say this. You could feel that this is a question that should be decided by the Howard County voters. Under the terms of this proposal, it must be approved by the voters in the state, a majority of those voting in the state, to become valid, and a majority of the voters in Howard County. So that's at the bottom, in the final analysis, it must be decided by the voters of Howard County. But all of us are sort of, by voting yes or no, saying we would permit Howard County to do this, or by voting no, we would say we would not permit Howard County to make this change. So those are the 5 ballot questions, and I'm embarrassed. Are there any Calvert County ballot questions? No. Hallelujah. I do not have to attempt to explain them. So I want to thank you. I could take a few. Do we have time for questions? I don't want to go over our time limit.
Question about question number 5.
Yes.
So I don't live in Howard County. I have friends who live in Howard County, but I don't really want to vote on that issue until we know what Howard County wants. So, like, if Howard County says yes, but the rest of the state says no, do they get to bring it up again then? Or is this like once? Yeah.
Well, theoretically they could, but the fact that the rest of the state voted no would discourage them from, the legislature would be reluctant to bring it up again. They say, oh, well, the voters already rejected that. So if, as a voter, the simple rule is, if you want this decided by Howard County, vote yes. Because if you vote yes, but Howard County votes no, it does not happen. If you vote yes and they vote yes, it does happen. Unless you have a very strong feeling about, maybe you're all children of orphans court judges, I don't know. You could have a very strong feeling in favor of, well, there ought to be a specialized court for wills, trusts, and estates. In that case, you would say, well, yes, I think we need that. But, yes. Time for
any other questions?
Are all of the
Yes, the question was, are all of the, yes, they are all posed as constitutional amendments. So these would be amendments to the Maryland Constitution, yes.
Down the road, if we changed our minds about it, would it require like a 2/3 vote to change that because it's a constitutional amendment?
No, so the process, so just so the question was, would it require a 2/3 vote to change the Constitution? The answer is no. You're thinking of the federal Constitution, it works that way. In Maryland, the General Assembly, both the House of Delegates and the Senate, must approve a proposed constitutional amendment, but it does not take effect unless the voters ratify it. So let's say 5 years from now, we look at one of these and we say, oh, that was a terrible mistake. We shouldn't have done that. You persuade your General Assembly to repeal it or change it in some way. Maybe in this cannabis question, maybe raise the age to 45. I'm sorry, I'm just, you could make any kind of technical changes, but a simple majority in each house of the General Assembly, and then ratified by the voters. I just realized I leaned back at the wrong moment there. Is there time for one more?
Sure.
Well, just had a question. So when you say ratified by the voters, is it a 50% or is it 2/3?
No, simple majority. Yep, what do we have, 50? Yeah. If there are 2 million votes and you have 1 million votes yes and 999,990 vote no, it passes. So 1 vote will do it.
Any more questions?
Thank you all.
One last thing, one more thing, and I'll be brief. My husband probably will say she can't do that, but I'm gonna do that tonight. I want to thank everybody for being here. I also want to thank all the League of Women Voters timekeepers, the screeners, the whole entire audience, especially the candidates, those of you that are left. I see Rick back there. So thank you, Ralph. I'd like to thank I feel like I'm at the academy. The videographer, and also Marty Madden, who's here from the newspaper. So I would like to thank everybody. I'd also like to acknowledge my co-moderator, Lynn Souza. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And I would like to repeat what I said the last time. The women here for the League of Women Voters have done a phenomenal job organizing things. And I think that J.C. Hooker, the president here, requires a special attention, and thank you for her.
November 8th, Election Day.